I do have to get your prediction. Who do you envision will win this whole tournament?
Yeah, I've said all along that I think.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Women's Game. This is a preview podcast for the upcoming Women's Euro. I am so delighted to be joined by my co-host today, TWG newcomer, former Lioness and Arsenal legend, current broadcaster, coach, activist. It's Anita Asante. Anita, thank you so much for being here with us. Where are you coming to us from today?
I am in Washington, D.C. Thank you for having me. Glad to be on your pod today. Just been here for the FIFA Club World Cup. So been really busy with football and everything, but so exciting. Such an exciting tournament. So it's been a lot of fun so far.
That's amazing. You have also been all over the place, which we're going to get into a little bit. I am really excited to pick your brain about this tournament, which is coming up quickly. The Euros are kicking off on July 2nd. They'll run throughout the month with the final slotted for July 27th. The tournament host nation, Switzerland, will become a hotbed for women's soccer teams like England, Spain, Germany, and more. And Anita, you're a former Lioness with 71 caps for England, including competing at those 2012 Olympics at home in London. Plus, you've got experience coaching and more recently broadcasting, covering the World Sevens, the Champions League final, the World Cup, the Club World Cup, which you're at right now. You were the most qualified person I could think of to get us excited for these Euros games. So before we dive in, tell us what you are most excited about when you think about this upcoming tournament.
Yeah, I think what I'm most excited about is the fact that, well, as a former Lioness, of course, England competing in it once again. But I think just the excitement of seeing so many magical moments that arise from major competitions and stories and emerging talent that we get to see on the big stage. For me, that's always the beauty of these tournament formats, and I'm really looking forward to it.
I know, I am too. It's really, opportunities like this are really where like legends get made. And so I just think getting to watch and bear witness to it is so exciting for us as the fans. I do want to kick off this conversation by talking about your team, England. The Lionesses won this tournament when it was last held in 2022 at home in England. For those of us that have maybe forgotten, a legend was truly made. This was the moment that Chloe Kelly scored the tournament-winning goal in front of almost 90,000 fans at Wembley Stadium. She took her shirt off Brandi Chastain style, really etched her name in the history books of English football forever. Anita, what was your experience of this moment? Where were you? What do you remember? And how have you seen football in England change in the aftermath?
Well, I was actually there at Wembley, in the final, watching that game. And honestly, it was like hairs on your arms, standing up moment for me to see her score that goal, to share it with, the 80 plus thousand people in the stadium. It was something that myself, I'd always wanted to achieve with the Lionesses, and we'd never managed to do it. So to witness it happen in real time was honestly such an emotional moment for me, and I'm sure all the former Lionesses as well. And the impact it had, beyond the competition was huge. So many young players, women and girls and boys, really wanting to play football, recognizing them as household names. As you said, legends were born from these moments, and Chloe Kelly certainly was one of them.
Oh my gosh, what an incredible moment to witness. I know that there are still, of course, really high expectations for England heading into this tournament as defending champions. More recently, the team narrowly lost to Spain in the World Cup final in 2023 and then failed to qualify for the 2024 Olympics. And then in the lead up to this Euros roster getting named, the team became the center of a lot of headlines when Mary Earps, Fran Kirby, and Millie Bright all announced that they wouldn't be a part of the Euros this year, with Mary and Fran announcing that they would be retiring from international football altogether. This was just a few weeks ago, and on the eve of a major international tournament, fans were surprised at these announcements. And so, Anita, as someone who intimately knows these players and the culture of this England team, what did you make of these events? And in your opinion, does it point to anything deeper going on in the locker room?
Yeah, of course. I think like everybody else on the outside, I was surprised by the news, and mostly because of the seniority of these players and the leaders that they are and the characters that they are. And they've been a massive part of the successes of the Lionesses over the last few years. So I think it was a surprise from that lens. But in another instance, I think lots of teams go through transitions, and it allows room for younger players to get their playing opportunities. And ultimately, these are professional footballers, but they're individuals that have the opportunity to make choices that they feel are right for them, and if they didn't feel that they could necessarily either compete from a mental or physical reasoning, and they recognize that wouldn't benefit the team and the squad overall, then in their minds, I think that is the right decision for them and the team. So, this is a very talented squad as far as I'm concerned. Hannah Hampton has been a large part of this England Lionesses team and has played a number of games. And I feel that this is the tournament where she really could assert herself. She's already the England number one, but show it to the rest of the world, essentially.
All really good points. I also think sometimes from the outside, we almost underestimate you were right to mention just like the toll that sometimes being in such an environment can take on players and trusting that these players know what's best for them. But also perhaps we're underestimating like the ability of the rest of the team to still come together around it. Of course, they're going to miss this leadership and miss some of these really experienced players. But I think that as a team, you have this now opportunity to come back together and to rally around each other, and not to like move on in a brash way, but to take upon yourselves this opportunity that's in front of you now. Serena Wiegman, England manager, has downplayed any of this kind of panic from the outside. Regardless of big headlines like this, I hope that there isn't anything more going on behind the scenes. England is one of my favorite teams to watch. I love to cheer for them. I played in the English Women's Super League for Man City, so I know a lot of the players on this squad, which is still such a stacked team. So, Anita, in your opinion, who are going to be the tournament makers this year for England?
Yeah, I agree with all your points. I think this England side has a number of leaders in them. It's great. I've got a great blend of youth and experience. And I think the players that are going to come alive and step into those shoes will be the likes of Grace Clinton. I think she is a really talented player, a player I've had the pleasure of working with both at Bristol City and with the England women's under 23s. And I think she has lots of creative ability, but she's matured a lot in that role as a midfielder. She will really embrace, I think, the opportunity to try and assert herself as an established England player. The other player I would say is Aggie Beever-Jones. I think for Chelsea, she's had an amazing season. Again, we've had really important strikers, if you like, retire, like in the likes of Ellen White. We've had Alessia Russo really come into her own. And now to have another player that can not only complement her, but also provide Serena with another option as that kind of out and out number 9. I think she can really step into that position.
I love those examples. I feel like this is such proof of like what an expert you are on this English team, because obviously the players that I was going to name were like Leah Williamson and Kira Walsh and these big name players that everybody knows and loves and have already proved themselves on this world stage. I love that you mentioned Grace Clinton and Aggie Beever-Jones, because I think it just really gives us that insight, the inside scoop almost, as to the players who can emerge this tournament as like the future of this English national team. All of these players will really have to step up, because the Lionesses are headlining Group D, the tournament's group of death featuring England, France, the Netherlands, and Wales. England is still a favorite to go all the way, but we can't mention favorites without talking about Spain. They were the 2023 Women's World Cup champions, but failed to medal at the Olympics last summer. They came in 4th, which I don't wish on anybody. I think Spain still probably boasts the most elite roster and probably not arguably just the most beautiful football to watch. Everybody knows the names Aitana Bonmati, Alexia Putellas, both Ballon d'Or winners who have been in great form for club and country this season. But Spain has other stars as well, including Claudia Pina, who was the leading goal scorer for the entire Champions League play this season at Barcelona. There's Mariona Caldente, who was the WSL's player of the season in her first year at Arsenal. Then they have NWSL leading goal scorer Esther Gonzalez, who has 10 goals in her first 13 games for Gotham this season. I'm out of breath talking about how good Spain is. With Spain's roster and experience, Anita, can they be beaten by anybody at the Euros?
Yeah, I think any team on their day can be beaten. That's the beauty of this sport and why we love it, why we follow it, why we're passionate about it. Of course, I think they are the teams that have set the benchmark because of winning major competitions, both domestically and internationally, and boasting such depth and wealth of talent. Absolutely. So they're definitely one of the strongest favorites. But I think they're also a team that have shown vulnerabilities and have shown that they can be exploited because they like to play an aggressive style of football in terms of having a high line, squeezing space, being aggressive in their counter pressure, but they also leave space in behind them and at times get caught out with more direct styles of play. But the point of it is, if you're going to beat a good Spanish side, you almost need them to not be at their best as well. You need them to not necessarily be firing on all cylinders, because when they get into that rhythm, that kind of passing combination style and movement, they're very hard to stop.
I know. I do not envy anybody who has to play Spain. And in the few opportunities that I had to play Spain, or even in club play to play against Barcelona, I was like so overwhelmed playing against them there. It was so difficult. One thing that I do imagine is still facing Spain is this issue of their relationship to their own federation. In 2023, their big World Cup winning moment was clouded when Spanish Soccer Federation boss kissed a player without her consent. That led to a trial that only recently came to a close. Even besides that case, some players have in recent years complained about a general lack of advancement in the Spanish Women's Soccer League. And I just wonder how the team is feeling in relation to their federation and the culture in Spain around women's football. Anita, I know you're not, you don't have experience as much experience with Spain as you do with England, but how do you imagine the players are feeling about this relationship heading into another major tournament?
This has been an ongoing issue for them with their federation, an ongoing battle that is in the kind of ecosphere of world football. All our eyes are on it. We're paying attention to what's going on. But they're also a team that won a major competition in the World Cup despite all of these issues around the team. So there clearly is a strong unity there within the group, when they're in competition, that they keep their bubble tight, that they keep their focus fully on their goals. And I think the main thing for them is that, when you have success, you have a platform then to really push the agendas that you're striving for progress and change. You really have the ears and amplification of those things, and I think they recognize that, because we know what it's like when you're in football. You don't always get to have the influence you wish to have, in the circles around you where the power structures lie. So I think ultimately they let the football do the talking, and I think they hope that that will allow them then to push the next part of progress for them. And I think we saw with the wave of support that they got after the aftermath of the World Cup globally, that everyone across women's football was behind them, was amplifying their message, was supporting them, advocating for them. And I think that's how we push for collective change and empowerment at the same time of female footballers.
Totally agree with everything that you said. And there are a few more teams that are considered favorites for us to touch on, like Germany, who are actually historically the winningest team in European history. They've won the Euros 8 times, but not since 2013. Last summer during the Olympics, I remember being so impressed with Germany's players, and it made me wonder why they hadn't won anything major in over 10 years. I think that was a little bit of a rough patch that seems to have brought them through a transition to a possible return to the top. So, Anita, I'm wondering from you, which players on Germany do you think have the most responsibility to carry this team? Who are you going to be watching the most closely?
Yeah, I mean, I looked at their squad, and I'm looking at it again, and I think that I've said that it could be one of the teams that cause an upset in this tournament. I think that they have a lot of experience in there. They obviously lost Alexandra Pop, who retired from international duty, but they've got leaders in there like Ann-Katrin Berger in goal, who's played at Chelsea. So we're quite familiar with her in the WSL, and obviously now at Gotham. I think they'll be looking to players like her. I think they'll be looking at players like Sarah Darbritz in the midfield. They've got Shirka Nusken, who is an extremely versatile player, can play in multiple positions in the midfield, the defence, has scored up front, provides that kind of fear factor because it means they can manipulate the team however they wish as well. And up front, I just think they've got a lot of weapons in their front line, which is quite frightening when you take Jura Brand, even Laura Freigang, Leah Schuler. I mean, I'm reeling off the list. The wealth of talent that they have in the forward line, quite simply, is frightening. And I watched them play England in a friendly at Wembley, And I was surprised at how quickly they've been able to recover and transition into the threat that they are now, with the dynamic transitions and the really aggressive attacking play.
I completely agree. And a lot of those attacking players are young, signaling that Germany will be dangerous attacking wise for years to come. I always do this when we have defenders on the podcast. I like want to know specifically a question about the defense because I just didn't really have like, those natural defensive qualities. But we're talking so much about Germany's attack, and
Yeah.
Germany strikes me as one of multiple teams in this tournament with a particularly strong attacking group, but maybe some more question marks around their back line. Besides, of course, Julia Gvin, who is an attacking outside back, but obviously is helping hold down that back line. If you agree with this, how can a team that is stacked up top protect themselves defensively with so many great strikers coming back at them in this tournament? Is this kind of an instance of like the best defense is a good offense?
Yes, absolutely. I think that when you have certain vulnerabilities, and sometimes that's just because of the relationships, in that defensive lineup, trying to get that understanding, managing the back line, the rotations, things like that. That is challenging, especially at the top end when you've got such good attacking players that you meet. But the best way, I think, to get the advantages of having such a dynamic attacking force is to have great counter pressure. Where can you win the ball higher up the pitch, in areas of the pitch that will not only allow them to transition to goal, but it will stop opposition being able to break into your half and counter attack on you when you're leaving space and you are quite vulnerable potentially. As you mentioned, Julia Gwynn is a very attacking, dynamic fullback. So she likes to get forward. She is absolutely going to leave space. So there is a cost to that. But if you can counter that cost by having really effective counter pressure, players that are willing to do that work, and also are brave enough to recognize triggers, backwards passes, head down, things like that, mistakes, then you're a threat. And you also make the opposition, I think, feel slightly more vulnerable in possession, how to break through lines.
Totally.
So for me,
Yeah.
that would be one way in which they could kind of negate the fact that maybe they have some weaknesses in those areas. And the other way is just making sure that their leaders really take responsibility and that they're communicating and managing rest defense when they're in attack, that they're always thinking of defense as well. We have the ball, we're in that half, we have control, we feel comfortable, but what if? You've always got to think with that mindset as well.
Such a perfect defensive answer, which I love, and I always need those reminders. Germany are in Group C with Denmark, Poland, and Sweden. They should have no trouble advancing. And I want to talk about a group like this a little bit. Definitely not the easiest group, but also not the group of death. And I often think back to my World Tournament experiences and how the group play influenced our journey throughout the tournament so much. So, like, contrastingly, in 2019 at the World Cup, we kind of cruised through our group. We won our first game notoriously 13-0. We entered the knockout round rested and really confident. And then on the other hand, in 2021 at the Olympics, we got shocked by Sweden in our first game. We lost 3-0. And I felt like we never actually recovered from that. It felt like that, what happened in the group play early on really shook us and we had to carry it with us. And so, Anita, as a player or as a coach, how do you think about how early success or early disappointment influences a team's journey throughout the tournament?
Yeah, I think we always say, don't we? We always get told, even as players, that the first game is the most important game. You want to get off to a great start in the group. You want to build confidence in your players. You want to get some momentum. But of course, if you face a setback, if you like, in a result or whatever, it's about how quickly can you bounce back and recover. How quickly can you learn from that game and what the things that went well and the things that perhaps could have been executed better. And as a coach, you would probably look at it tactically from that lens as well. Is it the fact that the team just didn't find the right relationships, but they're making the right actions? Perhaps they're not executing everything accurately, but they're trying to. Then these are small tweaks and adjustments you have to make. But if it's a structural thing, and the structure is what exposed the team and created more holes and vulnerabilities, then that's when, naturally, as a group of coaching staff, technical staff, you'd have to reassess, in terms of tactically your formation or positionally or personnel, how you move forward from that. And equally, it's about psychology. I think when you have such a legacy as you guys do, of course, and now it seems that our favourites in this competition, the likes of England, Spain, um, will have, if you have a team that's lower ranked than you and you're expected to win, then of course there's an expectation and a pressure that you should just go out there and win, right? And if you play a team that is slightly more closer in terms of the gap, with you, then you naturally, your players, I think the mentality is already there. It's already like, I'm ready to go to battle. I know I have to be at my best in my decision making, my action, my intent, all of those things. It's how you make that application consistent across whoever you play throughout the tournament, and recognize that you will have moments where it does not go right, right? But you can bounce back from that.
Totally. I think that the makeup of some of these groups will provide for like really interesting questions around that. How teams may go up, down, up. Maybe they'll cruise the whole way, or maybe they'll really have to struggle and fight and claw to get through. Germany's main competition in their group, and a team that's always a contender, is Sweden. They have some big players like Champions League hero Stina Blackstenius, who scored the game-winning goal for Arsenal just a few weeks ago in that huge victory over Barcelona. However, Sweden as a national team have looked a little uneven in recent games. I know I don't need to tell any American fans how dangerous Sweden can be in a major tournament. I just talked about how they started off our Olympics in a horrible, horrible way in 2021. But Sweden came in third at the 2023 World Cup. They were silver medalists at the 2021 Olympics. So they're kind of overdue for a big moment that's just theirs. Does Sweden strike you as a team that's ready to win this whole thing, or do you think considering them a favorite is a stretch?
No, I don't think it's a stretch at all. I think that they're a team that consistently fly under the radar, and you almost have to
Mm-hmm.
wonder why. They have reached so many major competitions and into the latter rounds, and they've also, won an Olympics. Like, they are there and thereabouts. I think with Sweden, it's more of a case of why not? Like, they absolutely, when you look at their squad and the players they have and the experience they have, and the teams that they play at across the world, they have top tier players. Stina Blackstenius is one of them you mentioned. Ritin Kanarid at Chelsea, Bjorn. There's so many top players from Sweden. Magdalena Eriksson. They're so experienced. They have so much character and leadership. And they're used to being in these positions, I feel like. They are used to playing the likes of Germany on multiple occasions. They're used to facing a USA. I think they have the mental strength. It's about consistency once again. Can they find a way to get out the group, and once they get to the knockout rounds, really believe that they can go on to win this, a competition like the Euros?
Yes. So I think I'd argue that those are the favorites. If England, Spain, Germany, or even Sweden won this tournament, I don't think anybody would be shocked. I want to talk about a few of the more interesting situations heading into the Euros, teams that I've categorized as wild cards. The most interesting one, I think, is France. When I played, France was always a powerhouse, and it seemed inevitable that they're going to win a major tournament. They're so good. They're one of the best teams in the world, but they've never realized that potential. And I'm so curious, Anita, from your perspective, what are they missing? Why have they never been able to win a major tournament?
I mean, it's a very good question, Sam, and I think it's a $1 million one, right? Because across every generation, we've had the same thinking. They've always had really talented squads with brilliant players, in fact, that just have not been able to achieve sort of the heights of international football. Often, I think it's the dynamics, is what's being reported, the dynamics within those squads, or the dynamics between the squad and the management, or the coaches, that have been the kind of the factors, the intervening factors that have kind of set them off track, perhaps. And maybe this is a new era where that is about to change and shift. It's a younger squad in general. They've left out big names, key players. Again, a shock for a number of us neutrals. Wendy Reynard will not be at this Euros. Kenza Dali will also not be at this Euros. is it a moment where the manager has felt that he's also looking to the future, a cycle of where these players will be available for the next few major competitions, and he wants to build those relationships and dynamics now whilst he has the chance, and a case of establishing the culture that he wants to instill in this French team to move them into the next era and into the next tier of what we're saying are the best in the world, if you like, or the best in Europe.
Yeah, this is such a tough one. It's such a gamble by France's manager because if they do well and win, he's a
Yeah.
genius. And if they, fizzle out, then he's made these huge omissions from the roster. And I think will receive a lot of criticism for that. So France is a wild card for me. Another wild card team for me is the Netherlands. It feels like the Netherlands have so many high profile players. We're always talking about Daniel Van de Donk, who has just signed with the London City Lionesses, which is very exciting. Arsenal's Daphne Van Domselaar, and of course, Man City's Viv Miedema. But as a team, the Netherlands have struggled to fully utilize these players. Plus, the Netherlands are in Group D with England, France, and Wales. Wales we'll talk about in just a second. And only two of these teams can go through. I feel so torn. I feel England will go through. And then I think I'm torn between France and the Netherlands, Anita. Who would you guess from Group D?
Yeah, I agree. I'm torn as well. I think I still probably lean a little more to France, but um, but again, it's so tough to call because I actually think the Netherlands will have a very good understanding of the way England play, and the structures. Obviously, having had Serena as their previous coach, and close links,
Mm,
the close Dutch links, if you like. Um, I
mm-hmm.
think they're also an exciting squad with lots of young talent. Romy Lupta is one of those up top that I look at and think if things come together for her and her team, she could be one of the shining stars of that Dutch team alongside, Brooks as well, who we know from Barcelona. Mostly plays, I think, a more attacking role for the Netherlands, but has shown her versatility in the fullback areas. I live in Wales, so for me, this is one of the hardest groups ever for me because my house is already torn between Wales and England. But to have France and
Oh,
Netherlands thrown in that mix, it makes it really difficult because these are all such quality teams that you would want
yeah.
to see in the latter stages.
Well, I do want to talk about Wales, and I feel your pain because obviously, look, Wales are an underdog in this tournament. This is their first ever major tournament. I think a team like Wales and some of these other underdogs, their goal is probably not realistically to win the whole tournament. They could give anybody in their group a great game. But I do want to give Wales a moment and talk about them. NWSL fan favorite and Welsh hero Jess Fishlock will be leading her team into their first ever major tournament. I also feel like it would be remiss not to mention just the global phenomenon that is Wrexham, the Welsh club that was taken over by American actors Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney. It's not obviously directly correlated, but it's hard to imagine that this kind of attention brought upon Welsh football hasn't trickled into the Welsh national team program. Wales is in this group of death. Anita, you live in Wales, your family, your house is divided, your wife is Welsh,
Yes.
and you guys have a baby who is going to have to choose someday who to cheer for, or maybe both. What do you think a successful tournament for Wales realistically looks like?
For me, a successful tournament for Wales is one that captures the hearts and minds of the whole nation. That's what it's about. That the whole nation goes on this journey with them. That want to tune into every game that they're playing it in. That they're supporting them from home, and that they are wearing their flag and with pride. That they go out there and they leave everything on the pitch for every single game, and they play with the passion that I know that Welsh people have, and I'm sure obviously spending time with Jess, that they are so passionate, they are so kind of excited, obviously, to be in the position they are, to be in this major tournament, and I think embrace the fact that they could be the disruptors. I don't think any of us are ruling them out at all. I think they go out there and they have that belief and they have that togetherness. On their day, anything can happen, and they have to believe that.
I actually have chills. I don't really have any connection to Wales, but it's so cool hearing you talk about this, knowing the little bit that I know Jess Fishlock, The one thing I know about Wales is that they will fight every single minute of every game that they play in. And I'm actually like so like emotionally connected and like really rooting for them. Wales is going to be such a fun team to watch. I'm excited for them. Switzerland is another underdog team that I do want to touch on because they are the host nation, which I think adds a layer of expectation and pressure to really represent your country and compete and like have a positive outcome. Switzerland do have some great tools at their disposal, starting with their star player, Leo Walti, who plays for Arsenal. Anita, is there anything you can add about maybe the pressure that's being added onto Switzerland as the host nation?
Yeah, of course. I think whenever you're a host nation, you know that the eyes of the population are on you. You know, everyone's carrying the weight of expectation and success on your shoulders, because I think we have seen the benefit and impact of what a successful tournament for any nation does in terms of its legacy and the impact it has from growing the game from a participation point of view, from an investment point of view, from a visibility point of view. So all of that will, the players will have a great awareness of that, and everyone within Switzerland will have an awareness of that as well. The positive element for them is it's always an honor to play in your home country as a host nation in front of your own fans, your own family, your own friends, and it carries a weight of celebration with it. You know, it's going to feel like a party, isn't it? Like fanfare. You know, that they have the opportunity to have it there on their own soil. A kind of element of kind of comfortability, if you like, of playing at home. And I think they will absolutely embrace that. They will absolutely share with the rest of the world a lens into Switzerland, their culture, their food, the diversity of their languages, their unbelievable cities. That's also all part of the tournament, and I think they will definitely showcase that as well as the talent on the pitch. You know, you mentioned Leah Valti, you know, Serna Gosovic, Sherton Lieb as a young star that's arising. So I think there'll also be opportunities for them to shine a light on the talent that they have in their squad.
Totally agree. And I think so much about, what happened in England, obviously with England winning, even what happened in the US in 1999. The young generation of children who see women playing soccer at this level are so inspired by it that whether Switzerland wins or not, that impact will really have like this, outlasting impact on generations to come of young footballers. There's also Italy, who have been performing well recently since acquiring Andrea Sonsen as manager. They're organized, tactical. They have really good depth in the midfield. There's also Norway, captained by Ada Hegerberg, also boasting Ballon d'Or frontrunner from Barcelona, Caroline Graham Hansen. And then Norway are in one of the easier groups. They should move on to the knockout rounds with some momentum behind them, hopefully. Plus, we've got Iceland. They're consisting of this generation of players that have seen a lot of investment from their federation and could very feasibly get themselves out of Group A. Anita, do any of these underdog teams strike you as capable of really making a run in this tournament? Do you see any of them as like a dark horse that will emerge?
Yeah, of course. I think Norway is a great a shout, I think, for a potential underdog in this tournament because they've largely underperformed, you know, in the previous Euros. And I don't think that they will, you know, that would have burnt them a lot. That would have hurt the way that they came out of that tournament. So they'll want an improvement on where they finished in the last Euros. And I think they have, you know, Ada Hegerberg, Caroline Graham Hansen, Guru Wrighton, Whitney Engen. Like, this is an exciting squad with great players, and they have underperformed previously, but they have a real great opportunity within the group, I think, to get out.
Yeah, I'm excited about this. I know we haven't even mentioned Portugal or Denmark, who definitely belong in the underdog category. They could surprise us. There's also Belgium, who shouldn't be overlooked, Finland, and Eva Payor's Poland. If only we had more time to go through every team. But before we let you go, Anita, I do have to get your prediction. Who do you envision will win this whole tournament?
Yeah, I've said all along that I think Germany, where, you know, they were my underdog team, and it sounds quite, you know, obviously being English, I want England to win, but I think Germany
Of course.
are in that transition phase and on a slight on a climb again. So I think they are potential winners.
Well, this summer we'll also see major tournaments in Africa and South America, the WAFCON and the Copa America, respectively. They're tough to watch here in the US on TV, but the women's game is going to cover them as best we can. I'm wondering, Anita, and this is my last question for you. When you look at the global soccer landscape and how much more competitive it's getting, what kind of potential do you see in major tournaments like the Euros and these other regional tournaments? And how do you hope and dream that they'll raise the profiles of these players and teams?
Yeah, I think it's fantastic that we have major tournaments across many confederations, because all it does is provide more playing opportunities for talented athletes across the world for them to actually display and showcase their quality globally, and that we get greater visibility on the game. And with that, I think we'll start to see the growth in investment in markets domestically in those leagues as well. And I think it's important to say, you know, we forget even here in the UK that two of the biggest transfers across women's football were two African players. One of which was Barbara Banda. So we know there's so much talent out there globally, and it's about allowing each market to reach their full potential.
Incredible. I literally learned so much from you today, Anita. I loved that answer. I'm so grateful that you came to join us on this Euros preview pod, and I'm feeling so ready for the tournament. So safe travels. Enjoy all the coverage that you're doing. We would love to have you back on the pod. This was so wonderful.
Oh, thanks, Sam. Had a great time. Look after yourself, and I hope you enjoy the Euros.
Thank you, Anita.